you're only taking this course for the competition aspect, I just want to give you a little warning that this lesson can get a bit dark when we start talking about the anatomy and what bullets do to it. You've likely noticed that any target you pick up for any shooting sport will normally value the highest scores for your hits near the center of the target. The further the hits are from the center of the target, the less points you'll achieve. But you still get points. And in competitions where time is recorded, it's almost always recorded in a negative against you, meaning that as time accumulates, the score on your target has less value, which is also a great representation of how it works in a real life context. Before we pull that trigger in a real life context or in a competition context, we should be asking ourselves, where is my preferred target area? And if I miss that, where is the acceptable target area? And then how much time do I have to make that happen? We would obviously like to stay in our preferred target zone as much as we can and as much as is prudent for the time that we have to do it. For instance, if you're playing a first-person shooter like Call of Duty and you're in a small CQB area coming around a corner, an enemy presents itself, you're not waiting for your reticle to get onto the preferred target area. You're shooting as soon as you see any acceptable target area and you're stitching up the body entirely. And the reason why we're doing this is because there's such a high time pressure in that scenario. Conversely, if there was zero time pressure and we saw an enemy across the map who didn't see us, we could take all the time in the world to find our preferred target area in the reticle, which is always a headshot, and then take the time to do a good trigger press and land on the preferred target area because there's no time threshold. But in our training, we should be preparing for both of these scenarios. We need to train at speed so we know our capabilities in these scenarios and how much it takes to make a hit, and then when speed is required, how much we can afford to take away and still make an acceptable hit. If there's no time demand, accuracy takes the front seat. If there's any time demand, then speed is of utmost importance in competition and in the fight. So let's talk about preferred versus acceptable target area. This is an IPSC target, which provides you the most points in the A zone, followed by the C zone, and then the D zone. Yes, we skipped B. This is a USPSA target, which has the same zones. We have an A zone, C zone, and D zone, with an additional A zone, and then B zone. These are the A zones printed out on a USPSA target and an IPSC target. On our standard bullseye B8 center target, we have our preferred target area being in the 10 or X ring, and then the acceptable target area moving out from the circle until we get completely out of the circle where it's no longer an acceptable target area. If we look at any of these competition targets, our preferred target area is going to be the A zone in the chest or the A zone in the head, near the center of the target. As we move outwards, the acceptable area of scoring is going to give us less points, and then when we get off of the target, it's no longer acceptable. If you want to train to a high accuracy standard, don't give yourself a large amount of acceptable target area. If you train on only your preferred target area, you'll notice that your groups start to come to the center of your preferred target area to avoid the unacceptable area. But remember, as soon as time is added into the equation, we now have to balance our accuracy with the clock. And the weight you place into either time or accuracy entirely changes depending on the context of the shot you're about to take. For instance, in a real life context, in a defensive encounter, if I were to draw out and take 5 seconds to place a perfect round into the thoracic cavity or into the T-zone, but my adversary takes 2 seconds and places 4 rounds scattered in a large group all over my torso, who wins? I would argue that if my adversary did that in 2 seconds, I'm likely on the floor and didn't have an opportunity to return around. The beauty of competition scoring is that they nail this perfect balance between speed and accuracy. For instance, if I were to take 2 rounds and place them right beside each other in the A zone, a nice accurate group, and I do this in 4 seconds, and on the other target, I place rounds with a very large spread, 2 into the C zone, spread very far apart, but I do it in half the time, in 2 seconds. The competition scoring would provide me a higher score for this. This would be a 3 hit factor versus a 2.5 hit factor. In terms of the group size, 1 inch on this target versus 10 inches on the second target is obviously a 10 times higher accuracy level on this target. But because I've taken double the amount of time to land 2 rounds into my preferred target area, rather than this shooter who landed 2 rounds in an acceptable scoring area but did it in twice the speed, I've lost the match. And in a real life context, this scoring makes sense. If you look at the study completed by the Buckeye Firearms Association, they found that it takes an average of 2 rounds from a defensive caliber pistol to incapacitate a threat. They also found that a first round incapacitation is only 14% likely in the extremities, 41% likely in the torso, and 75% likely in the head from 1 round. What this study also found is that there wasn't a large amount of variance in the incapacitation rates between all of the defensive calibers, meaning that the incapacitation rates were so similar amongst the calibers that it didn't really matter what caliber you were carrying, whether that was a 9mm or a .45. What this study shows when you apply it to a competition scoring system or real life context is that you should likely choose the pistol that gets you on target fastest with the fastest follow-up shots. Whether that be 9mm or .45, just pick a pistol that gets you on target that you're confident that you can shoot quickly. Sometimes we hear shooters refer to the term combat accurate, meaning accurate enough for combat. Now if I were to place rounds all over this target, I'm trying to hit my preferred target area, but my group size is so large that I'm only hitting my acceptable target area, right? And maybe one of these rounds goes off target. The ratio of getting hits on my preferred target area versus my acceptable target area always will be changing based on the context of the scenario. This, however, is likely not. There's not a lot of situations that we can be unaccountable for our rounds. If we have this target and the largest berm in the world behind it, we can be accountable for missing off the acceptable target area and launching them into that berm, because we know it's safe. It's entirely different to miss off of the acceptable target area and launch rounds indiscriminately. So don't let these types of groups fall into the excuse of combat accurate because we've landed 1 or 2 rounds on the target. Yes, that may be enough to incapacitate, but it's only by sheer luck that we haven't sent other rounds off the intended target and indiscriminately hit something that we shouldn't have. So how do we balance accuracy like this with a high time demand? You first need to know what you're capable of in terms of launching rounds into a preferred target area. Then we can have some acceptable loss in our accepted target area. And then if a high time demand is placed on you, you can then rebalance the equation between your preferred target area and the acceptable target area, depending on the situation. For instance, there's some situations that have a very high demand for a small preferred target area and basically no acceptable target area. An example of this would be a sniper in a hostage rescue incident that has to take a very precise shot on a suspect next to a hostage. They have a very small preferred target area and almost no room for error in the acceptable target area. But with that high accuracy demand, they also likely had more time to get in position and line up for that shot. Conversely, in a close contact scenario, for example, you're being stabbed, your preferred target area is likely still the head or chest because those are going to be areas that immediately incapacitate your threat. However, due to the high time demand, an acceptable target area is likely preferred to get rounds on target quickly. Therefore, hits like these would likely be more acceptable with a high time demand. Remember, from the study, on average, 2 rounds on any part of the body was normally enough to stop the threat psychologically or physically incapacitating them. If we look at the scoring zones from competition and apply them to a real-life context, they are generally extremely similar to the T-zone area on the human head, as well as the head box, and the thoracic cavity inside the A-zone. An IPSC target is also modeled after the same. This is why training in a competition setting is very transferable to a real-life context, because we have a high time demand as well as a good preferred target area. And in a 3D real-life context, these target areas are very transferable. Even our B8 center target is very similar. The T-zone, which is the ocular and nasal cavity combined in one, is often used in reference to a 3x5 card. Placing a round into the T-zone can result in flaccid paralysis, meaning that the subject doesn't have any involuntary muscle contractions and their lights turn off immediately. The common thought for this target area is that it's a last resort because it's a smaller preferred target area to hit than the thoracic cavity, which can also lead to immediate incapacitation. This target zone is used in the common drill of 2 to the chest, 1 to the head, which is referred to as the Mozambique or the fail to stop drill. The reason why that last round goes into the T-zone is because it can likely result in an immediate stop. Sometimes when rounds are placed into the thoracic area or extremities, the subject still has the ability to fight through this even though they have some kind of physical limitation that the round is placed on their body. A round into the T-zone doesn't care how tough the subject is or how high on drugs they are. It's going to defeat the brain, which therefore defeats the body immediately. Let's spend our time training on what's most important, and that's getting a round on target quickly. Speed and accuracy is the name of the game in competition and in a real life context.